You wake up motivated at 2 a.m. You watch a productivity video. You make a perfect plan for your life. Tomorrow is finally going to be different. And then tomorrow comes. You hit snooze. You scroll for 40 minutes. You avoid your work. And suddenly that motivation disappears like it never existed. If that keeps happening to you, you're not lazy. But you are believing one of the biggest lies students are taught. That motivation is supposed to carry you. Because honestly, motivation might actually be the reason you feel stuck. Most students live inside this cycle without realizing it. You feel guilty for wasting time. So you wait for motivation. Then motivation finally comes. You study hard for one night. You feel productive again. Then 2 days later, you crash. And the worst part? Every time this happens, you trust yourself a little less. You start saying things like, I just need to be more disciplined. I'm wasting my potential. Why can't I stay consistent like everyone else? But here's where it gets interesting. The problem usually isn't your work ethic. It's your relationship with motivation itself. Because motivation feels powerful, but it's emotional. And emotions are unstable. Think about it. Nobody says, I'm super motivated to brush my teeth today. You just do it. But students treat studying like it needs emotional permission first. And that's dangerous. Because the moment your mood changes, your entire system collapses. And this is the part nobody tells you. Motivation is addictive. Not in the obvious way, but in a subtle way. You become obsessed with feeling ready instead of actually taking action. That's why people spend hours watching productivity content, making schedules, downloading apps, buying notebooks, without actually doing the work. Because planning feels productive. Motivation gives you emotional excitement without requiring long-term discomfort. But real progress? That usually feels boring, quiet, repetitive, sometimes even disappointing. And students hate hearing this because social media has completely romanticized motivation. You see these study grind videos with perfect lighting, coffee, music, aesthetic notes. But nobody uploads the real part. The boring Tuesday afternoon where they studied while tired. The day they wanted to quit, but still opened the laptop anyway. That's the part that actually changes people. Not motivation. Repetition. Now this might sound simple, but this realization changed everything for me. You do not rise to the level of your motivation. You fall to the level of your systems. That's why some people stay consistent even when they don't feel like it. Not because they're superhuman. Not because they're always inspired. They just stop negotiating with their emotions every day. And once you understand that, things get way easier. Because now the goal isn't to feel motivated. The goal is to make action easier than avoidance. That's a completely different game. So let's talk about how to actually do that. First, stop building routines for your ideal self. This is one of the biggest mistakes students make. They create impossible schedules like wake up at 5 a.m., study 8 hours, no distractions, gym every day, and it works for maybe 48 hours. Because that routine was designed for a version of you that doesn't exist consistently. Instead, build routines for your lowest energy days. This changes everything. Can't study for 3 hours? Fine. Study for 20 minutes. Too tired to work out? Do 10 push-ups. No energy to read? Read 1 page. Because consistency built on small actions is infinitely stronger than motivation built on emotional highs. And here's the weird part. Small actions create motivation after you start, not before. Most people wait to feel ready. But action is usually what creates momentum. That's why the hardest part of studying is rarely the studying itself. It's starting. And once you realize that, you can use it strategically. Here's something that genuinely works. Make your goals so small your brain can't reject it. Instead of, I need to finish this entire chapter, say, I'll just study for 5 minutes. That sounds almost stupid, but your brain resists pressure, not progress. 5 minutes feels safe. And most of the time, once you begin, you keep going anyway. But here's another dark side of motivation nobody talks about. It makes you emotionally dependent on success. You only feel good when you're productive. And when you fail one day, you spiral. one missed study session becomes, well, I already ruined the week. That mindset destroys consistency more than procrastination itself. Because disciplined people don't avoid failure. They recover faster from it. That's the real difference. If you miss one day, don't miss two. That single rule can save you months of guilt. And honestly, students underestimate how much guilt drains energy. When you constantly feel behind, your brain starts avoiding work because work becomes emotionally painful. That's why some students procrastinate even on important goals. It's not laziness. It's emotional avoidance. But here's the good news. You can rebuild trust in yourself. Slowly. Every time you do what you said you'd do, even something tiny, your brain notices. You become someone you can rely on again. And that confidence feels way better than temporary motivation. Now let me tell you something most people realize too late. The students who win long-term are usually not the most motivated. They're the ones who learn how to keep going when motivation disappears. Because motivation is temporary, but identity is powerful. Once you become someone who always studies a little or always shows up, you stop relying on emotion. It becomes part of who you are. And this is the part nobody tells you when you're younger. Consistency is actually a form of self-respect. You prove to yourself that your future matters. Even on random days. Even when nobody is watching. Even when it feels boring. That's real growth. Not those sudden bursts of inspiration at midnight. So if you've been stuck in this cycle of motivation, burnout, guilt, and restarting, try this tonight. Don't create a perfect plan. Create a plan you can still follow on your worst day. One small habit. One simple action. One promise you'll actually keep. Because your life probably won't change from one huge motivational moment. It'll change from the quiet decisions nobody sees. And honestly, that's a much more powerful way to live. Start small. But start today. Let's fix this together.